We'll move on. Our next presenter is Anthony Akoi, representing the Kelton Group of Companies from Fiji. Anthony will talk about the company's journey towards HACCP certification. I know this topic has come up in previous presentations. And we thought it would be useful to hear from a company who went through this journey to share with us their learnings. Kelton Group is represented, as I said, by Anthony, apologies. Anthony Akoi is the Managing Director of Kelton Group of Companies. And we're very pleased to have you on board, Anthony. So thank you, and the floor is yours. You have 10 minutes. Naka.
Okay, thank you, Glenys. Thank you, Rohan and team, and Bulavanaki, everybody. Just a bit of an overview. There's a lot of material to cover off in 10 minutes, so we'll do our best to see how we go. The first 3 slides will be just on the operation itself, and perhaps some of the lessons that we've learned from trying to farm and export to New Zealand. The last 3 slides will be on the biosecurity side of things. Small point of correction, we haven't actually achieved HACCP certification yet. We're still on the basic biosecurity certification, which allows us to supply the informal market in New Zealand. But more on that as we go through. So very briefly, today, there's 2 of us that will present. Myself, obviously, as Glenys has explained, I run Kelton Group. We also have Suli Tawake, who's currently our GM out on the farm. And his prior role was Deputy CEO of Biosecurity Fiji prior to joining us. Kelton, very quickly, Kelton's a private family investment group. We've been operating for over 50 years now. Fairly wide range of business investments, from trading, property, which is our mainstay, which is how we acquired our farm. Technology, computers, one of the pioneers in computing across the Pacific. So that's probably what aside from property, what we're known for. Manufacturing, construction, aviation, tourism, insurance, and our agricultural business, commercial farming. Today, there are only 2 areas that we operate in, that is property and commercial agriculture. So that kind of gives you a bit of an indication about what we think about this opportunity. I've put a link on the slide for our website, and in particular our farming property. And that is the Kelton Estate. Kelton Estate is a property that's owned by our group. It's a 2,700-acre farm just outside of Suva in Nauvoo, on the Suva side of the Nauvoo Bridge. What we're trying to do there is develop a vertically integrated farming operation, where we do the farming, we do the food processing, and we do the export and distribution. Our Tuikai is our export brand, and at the moment we've just chosen to focus solely on frozen taro and cassava, and just very illuminating for me to listen to some of the prior presentations, because it appears that we've actually taken the shortcut quite fortuitously in selecting frozen products and picking a fairly basic product set to work with. We have an Auckland operation, a small distribution team based in Auckland that addresses our customer set there. In our journey, we've had to come to grips with the whole idea of commercial farming, which really isn't practiced well in Fiji, aside from the likes of Grace Roads Foods, who are a Korean organization that's come in and really shown everyone how to go about the process.
Anthony, sorry, it's Glenys here. I'm so sorry to butt in, but we can't, your slides on the screen is not quite visible. I just wondered whether you could please change the appearance so that we are seeing one slide at a time.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yes.
You seeing both, or?
Yes, we're seeing both.
Okay. So let me. Is that better?
Yes. And
Okay.
then could you go to the function?
Yeah. Let me just minimize that. Okay.
Yes, much better.
Okay. Great.
Thank you.
Okay. Perfect. Right. Yeah. So introduction of innovations and technology at every stage of the process. That's from the farming operation itself through to factory processing, and then obviously the export. For marketing and branding, we've found that it's quite important for us to try and develop a relationship directly with the market. So we have a website, and we also use social media, Facebook and Instagram. And I've put a link down the bottom to our website address. If you go there, you can kind of see the things that we're trying to attempt in relation to educating the markets that we're targeting in terms of how our product looks, and also how to prepare our product for consumption. To date, we've done 33 containers to New Zealand. I would have to say that we're still learning, as crazy as that sounds. We should be quite a bit further down the track, but it's a process that's not an easy one. And I totally echo Alo's comments earlier about some of the difficulties that people getting into this area of commercial agriculture face, and ourselves being one. We have, however, gone through the processes, all of the processes that are required. We've even gone as far as getting a Woolworths Countdown Supermarkets approval. So if you can imagine some of the discussions around GS1 and packaging requirements, et cetera, those goals have been kicked and ticked off for us. And prior to our current packing operation, we used to work with the government factory AMA, who are HACCP certified. And that was the mechanism through which we were able to access Countdown Supermarkets. Our current certifications are obviously biosecurity approval in the factory that we are operating at the moment. It's a Fiji product, Fiji grown, so those are fairly standard certifications. We do hope to get certified, audited and certified for organic production, which we do anyway. We use completely organic methods. We don't use pesticides, we don't use herbicides on our farm, and everything's done mechanically with machinery. ISO certifications, that's another step, both for the farm and the factory. HACCP, of course, which will open up tier 1 in Australia and New Zealand, and also the US market, which I think is the big opportunity for Fiji agricultural export. Carbon zero, that's another thing that we're fortunate enough to have half the property covered in a rainforest. So there's an opportunity there for us to get that audited and added to our list of qualifications. Fair trade, we do work with a network of outgrowers, and wherever we endeavor to pay, we track market pricing right back to the farm gate at the outgrower level, and ensure that our outgrower network actually gets a fair shake in terms of the money they get for their products. Just very quickly, some of the lessons that we've learned, and again, I'm very conscious about time. As I touched on, there's a huge difference between subsistence farming and commercial farming in Fiji. I would say that 99% of the operations in Fiji are doing subsistence farming. And the actual process of doing commercial farming is quite different to how what people understand to be farming in Fiji. Again, as Arlo had pointed out earlier, you must be well capitalized before you start. Otherwise, you wind up spending the same money plugging holes and leaking unnecessary operating costs that you could have spent just getting the right machinery and doing it properly from the start. So that's actually really important to have a plan, have a sufficient amount of capital before you start, and actually work the plan. The third point is one that a number of the prior presenters have raised. You must find your customer in your market before you start planting. It's too late because you're dealing with perishable commodities. It's too late when you are ready to harvest and you run around and try and find how to sell the product. You're guaranteed you'll lose money. Fourth point, get good advice. This is very important for farming new entrants into the market. Generally, it takes many, many years of operating to acquire the knowledge that you need to be successful on your own farm. And each farm is quite different to, for example, planting dalo on our farm, and the cassava is quite different to dalo and cassava planted on somebody in the Singatoka Valley or in the Lomai Vuna or some other place on Viti level. The products might be the same, but the methods and how you go about it really is quite specific to the land itself. Point 5, you must invest in the right machinery and equipment. I think Arlo touched on this as well. Again, commercial farming is, as I say, is quite different to subsistence farming. When you scale, and if you want to provide the kind of consistency of quantity of supply and pricing that's required to make this a sustainable business, you must have the right gear and the right plan from the outset. Point 6, again, the same sort of point, different flavor. The farm setup is important, and you've got to do it before you start. You've got to work out your beds, you've got to dig your drains, you've got to work out your irrigation, you must work out your workflows. All of those things need to be done beforehand. Point 7, as you go through the crop cycle, consult MPI in your local country. Let them educate you on what the processes and the protocols that are required for growing the crop successfully, what those are, and implement. That's what they're there for. Use them. Generally, they're free. And again, it goes back to getting the good advice. But as you go, evolve your method. Sometimes they may not be, right up to the mark in terms of some of the advice they dispense, and you might find in your experience that your journey is a little bit different to how they say. So don't be afraid to sort of adjust as you go forward. Number 8, bed preparation, bed maintenance, absolutely critical. We found you've got to, you can't sort of plant and then try and do your bed preparation afterwards, as most Fiji farmers tend to try and do. You must do your bed preparation beforehand, like Kiwi farmers do. And maintaining the beds, weeding, particularly up here in the Pacific, is really important because everything just grows out of control, and you must pay attention to that part. Otherwise, your yield will wind up being substandard. Product presentation, that's important. Packaging, you've got to pay attention to the details there. Your graphic design, packaging quality, the durability and when you ship in the containers and how it's handled in the supermarket. All of those things are actually areas that you have to invest in to get your product right. The packaging is actually a part of the whole product itself. So sometimes people sort of think about the contents. They don't really, and it's an easy mistake to make. They don't really actually think about the look of the packaging, but it's probably, I would say, as important as the product itself, the quality of the product itself. Product presentation, the internet, I think that's first point of call for a lot of the consumers. And if you want to establish your brand, you must be able to build like a B2C type relationship with your consumer, even though there may be 3 or 4 other third parties in the supply chain before your consumer handles your product. You've still got to, and leaving that part to somebody else to do for you is, we think, is a mistake. You've got to actually try to invest there. Point 10, keeping prices and supply volumes stable and predictable. This is quite important. Some of the comments that I heard earlier when we started our journey is that, you know, suppliers in Fiji are famous for sampling. So they can produce wonderful samples, but when you ask them for a container a month or 2 containers a month or 10 containers a month, there's, you know, silence, because no one's kind of worked out how to sort of backfill and do the hard yards to make sure that you know, the consistency of supply, and therefore the pricing is stable right across the board. There is also a little bit of a market issue here with, I know a lot of our contemporaries in agriculture in Fiji, exporters, they face situations where the middlemen tend to sort of dominate in terms of price structuring and that. There are, in mature supply chains, there are definite margins, you know, in terms of fresh produce and cold chain supply, which are there. And unfortunately, finding those channels aren't necessarily easy for small suppliers. And what tends to happen is they wind up with somebody who knows somebody, and then that guy thinks he can put 100% on the product, you know, if he imports it, and then it, you know, the whole thing kind of goes sideways because the product ends up at market too expensive, and it's just not, you know, what the consumer wants. And lastly,
Right, Johnny, we're going to have to move along here. I just got a message that the next presenter has to leave shortly. So if you wouldn't mind just taking us through the remainder.
Okay, all right. So I'll skip through that. So I'll turn over now to Ratu Suli, who will just do the last 3 slides.
Okay, Vinaka, thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just go very briefly, or maybe I just jump to the second slide.
Yeah, okay, sure.
Yeah.
Just okay, right. There we go.
I just go directly to the some of the requirements by biosecurity in establishing a pack house. A suitable site is very important. We need to actually select a suitable site, and then it must be accessible at all times to all vehicles, especially the container trucks. And then we must actually adhere to the floor plan of biosecurity for Fiji, because it includes actually the proper drainage system. And then we need to have enough adequate space in the pack house to allow people to move around freely. And then there should be physical separation between all operational points. We have an unloading zone, we have a cleaning, peeling zone, and we have processing zone, packing zone, and then we have a storage zone, and also loading zone for export. And the floor must be concrete and proper drainage system in place, and also a proper waste management control system in place. Must have a ceiling to prevent dust accumulation, easy to clean. And then it should be designed to prevent pests and other contamination entering into the house. And then we should have a proper ventilation and general hygiene system in place. Biosecurity sanitation requirement must be met. And then we should have a very important inspection and quality control room, separate from the storage room. And there are other sanitation areas, like we need to have a small kitchen, a place where the staff can have their meal, a proper area for staff to to have a shower change, and should have adequate water supply, and also a water heating system in place. Can get another the last.
Okay.
Yeah. These are some of the requirements for you to able to export the container. As soon as the container is actually closed, you need to provide a commercial invoice. That is the first thing. Then we have a bill of lading provided by the shipping company, a phytosanitary certificate by Biosecurity Authority of Fiji for frozen export in Fiji, it's minus 18 degrees for 7 days before the container is able to be exported. And then we should have a packing list, which actually shows all the packages in the container. And then we have a temperature declaration for frozen exports, which is monitored by Biosecurity Authority of Fiji, and then a packing declaration. So these are some of the important documentations that needs to be provided before we can export the container and allow the container to be freed at the imported destination.
Okay, so thank you. That was basically all we had prepared for the session today. Trade Commission.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much, Kelton. Thank you to Anthony and your co-presenter. Some very, very important lessons learned, and thank you for sharing the journey of your company. To those listening in and registered here with us this afternoon, I'm sure Anthony and his colleagues at Kelton would be happy to answer your questions offline. And we will be sharing Anthony's presentation along with the other presentations later on today.